And it was really remarkable to sit and actually think for a minute about how far the field of early childhood has come. And I honestly have to give a lot of credit to that, to the people that started in their early days with CDR and their commitment to what we do. Really made a big impact on how things are done nationally, and I think we can all be really proud of that. So we actually thought our anniversary was 1966. We realized we had a little bit different a start year, so we started to think about, well, how do we memorialize this pretty magnificent event? And one of the ways we did that was to think about putting the history together. Marcia did a great job of explaining to the group earlier why we felt like that was important. The history of CDR is very complex, and it's pretty fascinating. And really, but the thread that runs through it is we have impacts on families' lives in a way that's really unique. So we've got a few folks here today that are going to offer some thoughts about that and our history and how this history book came together and the process and how it'll be used, but really the significance of CDR in the field of early childhood. So first, I'd like to call on Kathy Alford. She's willing to come up and say a few words. And we're tethered to the, so.
I had the privilege of working with a lot of the staff, as well as former staff, in trying to find some families from our 50 years that we could interview and write stories about for what would become our Journeys history book. And I'd like to thank all of you who helped with that, helped me contact families. When you see the history book, you'll see that there are some wonderful family stories, but maybe the family that you told me about is not in the book. There are going to be more family stories coming out over the next 12 months of celebrations in different ways, including newspaper articles. I'm particularly grateful to the development staff because I gave them 4 pages plus on each family and child, and they had to narrow it down to fit into a much smaller space. As we interviewed the families and selected which ones would go into the book, we wanted to have some of the oldest adult children that we could find. And so there aren't a whole lot of younger ones. And many of you have been working with families, and they're not represented in the book. They may be represented better over the next several months as we do more stories. But part of our emphasis in the book, as Paul has said, was history. The journeys that are in the book are really very successful, meaningful journeys. Not every family's journey defines success the way another family's journey would define success. And just as the book was going to the publishers, we were reminded of this by 2 obituaries in the daily press. One of a young 15-year-old girl who had died of the complications of her illness and her disability, and one of a 20-year-old young woman with a similar story. And so we impact families at a very, very critical time in their lives and their children's lives. All of the children have very different outcomes. But I hope that you, as you have the opportunity to read these stories over the coming year, you will see what a part of this you are. You are now part of a 50-year tradition, and there's going to be a 75th birthday celebration and a 100th birthday celebration. And so if your family isn't in the book right now, they might be previewed in 25 years or 50 years. So I hope that you will keep that in mind as being part of a tradition, as Paul has said, where we may serve a family for a brief time in the context of a 35-year life, but it is such a critical and important time. Thank you.
That's a great point, is that the impact that you all have on families lasts a lot longer than their enrollment. And a lot of the families and kids that we've served have used the experience that they've had with you as a staff to inspire them to lead efforts to improve conditions for treatment in families across the state. They're chairing boards that serve people with disabilities in the community. That it's phenomenal the long-term impact you have. It'd be difficult to exaggerate how important the work we do is. So I'm thrilled that you get to also hear from the person who really did some magic in making this book come together. It is one of the most impressive publications I've seen. And again, thank Eddie for his support of the cost of doing it, but it looks beautiful, and it is what it is, in large part because of the talent, creativity, and devotion of Rita Francavilla to that effort. So I'd love to get her up and have her share some thoughts with you about the book. I wish I had one to show you, but I don't want to spoil your secrets. Oh, she's got, come on up here.
For just a minute, because I also wanted to tell you what a joy and privilege it was for me to work on this book. And I learned so much about CDR that I never knew before. And the visionaries who began CDR, it's just an incredible story. And I wanted to thank Paul and Marcia and Mary Jean for all their support and how many times they read the book for us. I wanted to mention Kathy and all the work she did on these journeys and finding these remarkable young people that I had the privilege to be there at their photo shoots and meet them and hear their stories. And without Kathy's work on this, it just wouldn't have been the same, because the stories are the heart of the book, I think. And to Corinne Garland and Barbara Neist, who I got an added bonus. I became their friend. I knew them, but not that well. But after working on these books, I ended up with 3 new friends, these remarkable women who did so much for CDR over the years. But what I wanted to share with you, I know you will read every word in this book, but just in case you don't, I want to read something on page 63 that Corinne wrote at the end, toward the end of this book. And I think it's really important that you all hear this, just in case you don't read it. CDR's staff is its primary resource, gifted in their skills, seemingly without limit in their ability to give their time, talent, and personal warmth to the children and families who need them, and to one another in encouragement. We owe them more than we have been able to say in telling CDR's story. While we regret that it is not possible to acknowledge the CDR staff individually for their contributions, we welcome the opportunity that this story provides to thank them collectively. Happy birthday and many more. For 50 years, you, the staff, have been a gift to CDR.
She also volunteers in playgroup as well, so her contribution to CDR is pretty tremendous, and we appreciate that. So, and Corinne's here as well, and we want to really thank, she did so much of the authorship of this work. We actually had lunch at one of our board members, Betsy Anderson, had a brunch for us to celebrate the book, and it was fun to watch the founders of CDR compare notes about the names of families and when they were enrolled and where the kids are now. It was like an encyclopedia of detail that is just so tremendous that really made me appreciate how much Corinne knew virtually every detail that was going on with the families, and is still kept up with many of those families. And I think when you read the book and you see it, you'll appreciate the love that went into it. And that's the main message we want to have you go home with, is that you're part of a really wonderful tradition here. You're going to get to read the details about it, but really we're a part of what's coming next. So I think that's the beautiful thing the next 50 years for us. So we also wanted to recognize and thank Kathy Hornsby. So I'm going to give you a little backstory on this. We thought it would be wonderful to commemorate the 50th in a variety of ways. We've talked about the book, and it's phenomenal. We also thought that wouldn't it be great if we had a beautiful work of art to symbolize CDR's journey, really our own journey. We tell this journey stories about the families we've worked with, but CDR's got its own journey. And so first name that popped into anybody's mind really was Kathy Hornsby. And why that is because she's she's got talents in a lot of different artistic areas. Photography is one, painting and media is another, and there's probably a dozen that I don't know. I actually had a chance to say some comments on CDR's behalf when she received the Community Builders Award recently from the Masons Lodge. And I learned about her volunteering at the concession stand at the Little League booth and saving, well, I won't get into one of the stories because it was it was pretty interesting. But she makes interesting contributions to the science class at Matthew Whaley. I'll just leave it at that. And she's really helped preserve some land here in the community that otherwise probably would have been developed, and really has had a huge impact on this community. But when we reached out, I think it was Marcia that reached out to her. Hopefully she responded enthusiastically. And those of you that were on staff at the time may have seen her email where she asked, what words come to mind when you think about CDR? What images, what colors, what shapes, any of those types of things. And she was able to integrate that into one of the most beautiful works I've ever seen. It's hanging in the Norge office. And funny part about that was we got a little snafu with our schedule, and Marcia and I were looking forward to seeing her on Tuesday and taking a first look at it. And she showed up on Monday with it, and the 50th anniversary community event committee was all there. There must have been a dozen people there, and everybody's jaw just dropped. It was just absolute. And then she had to take it away to go get it framed and bring it back. And we were like, can't take that away. We want that. And as you've seen it, it's just absolutely beautiful. And it's been incorporated, as Marcia shared, onto the cards. We have giclées, I believe I'm pronouncing it correctly. And we presented Kathy with one of those. Those are going to be hung in some areas through the community as well. And then we're going to have posters for sale as well. So that's she's allowed us to, not all artists would be willing to do that, to allow us to do prints and cards. And we really appreciate that. So, Kathy, thank you. Would you like to say anything, or because you're more than welcome to have the floor if you like.
Oh no.
Oh yeah. But by the way, some of the visitors, when we read these awards, I always ask the staff, "Would you like to say something?" And 90% of the time they say, and they just shake their head and walk away. But thank you, Kathy, for one of the things I was able to share with the Masons, or the Masons Lodge, was that in 2007 we had a sewage flood in the building, and we when we went through the litigation process, we had to establish our cost. How much is it going to cost us to replace everything that got damaged? And because Kathy was at the helm when that building was being built, the records are so detailed and so complete that I was actually able to hand them a binder and say, replace all of this. They weren't estimates, they were actual model numbers. We had everything there. I'm still finding some notes from Kathy's days, and I thought I'd have a little fun with her because she's got a great sense of humor. And while she was involved in doing the building, this was, the building hadn't been built. There was nowhere to go to the bathroom. And so, I'm sorry, I know this is like not, but the building was built.
Because of a little snafu with our hookup, with this, all this kind of stuff, we were not giving the county permit to hook up yet. And yes, the staff was moving in and getting things set for this opening. Sandy Warner was involved with all this. And so people needed to know where to go.
So if you're wondering, letter B is Jack Massey Contractors. Gary Massey was on our board. It says not many women. Tuano Middle School, go ahead and sneak a smoke. Welcome South, anybody go there? It says go ahead. No, it says grease up or gas up. Design Master, pretend you're with UPS, wear brown. The Mennonite Church that's across the street, prayers helpful, quiet too. One of my favorite is large trees, go back to nature. It's not just a trend. So, anyway, I know that's not typically what your executive director would show for an honored guest. Knowing Kathy, I think she'd be fun. So we've also got a lot of fun things to do today, and that is to recognize some longevity and also some special awards. And we've got 2 longevity awards to do. So we're going to celebrate 5 and 25 years, which is a tremendous accomplishment anytime. So if you all would help me congratulate Debbie Connell for her 5 years of service.
Hey, Debbie.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, this is the part where I ask if anybody wants to say anything, and they say, oh, thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
We have Jenny over here doing photos.
So, okay, yeah.
No, if you do receive an award, I would ask if you could, at the end, we're going to stand here and try to do a group shot so we can use these to share with the community the commitment of CDR staff. I think one of the great ideas that Rita had for the book was a photo of anybody that had served at CDR for, it was 15 years, and even with a couple of people missing, it was a big group. And it was so big that I didn't get the photograph done right, but she was able to Photoshop it to make it look
Everybody with their eyes closed.
so yeah, so for those of you that are new, we recognize longevity in 3 years, 5 years, and then intervals of 5. So then 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, and then recently, if those of you that were here when Ella was here, 40 and 45. So we're blessed to have that kind of commitment. So for our next one, I think I was going to call on Lisa. You had a few comments you wanted to make for this? And we're celebrating a 25-year anniversary today, which is pretty cool.
We are happy to celebrate the 25th anniversary of Linda Kelly because Linda Kelly is an original. Linda Kelly was our original. When we acquired First Steps from York County in 1990, Linda was the very first staff member that we hired. And she had already been working at PCDC, at the Parent-Child Development Center, at Griffin Yates for 5 years before that, from 85 to 90. So she's actually been living over at Griffin Yates for 30 years. And her supervisor at Griffin Yates was none other than Jim Yates. The other part of the namesake was the former Magruder Annex principal, Marion Griffin. So the Magruder Elementary School that we know now wasn't even built yet. It was just like a little old annex building. So when we first started operating First Steps, it was a community-based program, and we had 3 classrooms. There were 2 classrooms with 20 preschoolers, so there were 20 3 to 5-year-olds in each of the 2 classrooms, and then there was a classroom with infants and toddlers. And Linda was in one of the preschool classrooms. The starting salary of teachers back then was $5 an hour. And Griffin Yates had just been overhauled for asbestos, and they were remodeling in anticipation of us coming. So York County asked us, was there anything special that we would like in our classrooms? So we tried to talk them into building these ginormous sinks. I don't know if Linda remembers this conversation. The giant sinks in the classroom that have like hoses, that we could like hose down the kids if they got messy. There were some plumbing issues and some cost issues, so York County didn't go for that plan, but we did settle for some very, very colorful balances that were sung by one of our long-standing volunteers, Lucille Rowe, who also spent time in the office over at Griffin Yates. So because it was a community-based program back then, so this was predated early head start, I decided to enroll my then 2-year-old daughter, Amy, and her teacher was none other than Linda. And so Linda and I bonded very quickly over our daughters because her daughter, Nicole, was a little bit older and was in elementary school at the time, but it was pretty obvious that Nicole was going to be a really special girl, and that she was destined to have a great career as a distinguished track and field star. So we would always check in on their latest achievements, and Linda would tell me all about Nicole's escapades long after our daughters left elementary school and First Steps. But I like to remind Linda that she gave my Amy a good start on her way to becoming a doctor. So, the other thing I was thinking about for your 25 years was all the training that you've gotten. So I decided yesterday to pull your personnel file, and I had this great idea that I was going to add up all the hours of training that Linda had. And after about 5 minutes, I gave up because just since early head start, since First Steps became an early head start program, the training logs are like this. Like you have the biggest personnel file I think of anyone. So I sort of gave that, but I figured that she's probably one of the most well-trained people at CDR. And I always say that if you hang around long enough, they'll put you in charge of things. So there was a lot of times when I pushed Linda to take on responsibilities, but she really just preferred to kind of focus on the kids and really appreciate the community where the kids came from, because Linda is a native, so she was born and raised, graduate of Bruton High School, and so that's really where her heart is with the kids and the neighborhoods around Griffin Yates. So congratulations on the distinction of being the only staff member that's left from Griffin Yates. And who knows, maybe we'll talk you into being in charge of something in the next 25 years. I think Kofi wanted to say a couple of words.
Sure.
Then to paid me off. I'm going to echo a little bit of some of the things that Lisa said about you, Linda. You are very quiet in your nature, but you have such a stature in your love and your giving and your commitment to this program. It is easy to buy into CDR, to be here over 5, 10, 15, 20 years when you believe in the mission and you believe in the purpose. And you've always done that. Linda has been an advocate for CDR as long as I can remember, quietly done in the community, always singing the praises of CDR. And you show up and you participate and you do all those things. But there are two things that stand out to me when I first arrived at CDR, 20-something years ago, at Griffin Yates. I'm gonna tell a funny story, and then I'm gonna tell a story that is dear to you and me both. When I very first was hired at Griffin Yates, there were all these little kids running around. I particularly worked with children that were 3 and up. So I worked with toddlers. So when I was hired, I guess I didn't ask a lot of pertinent questions like I should have asked. For instance, what age group will I be working with and all that type of stuff. So I get in there and everything, and I saw these little bitty kids running around. There were, different sizes, little and here and there. And I looked around and I'm like, well. And then I looked at Linda and I said, and Lorene at the time, I said, where are all these little kids going to go? And Linda, if you know Linda, she had that look like, they're going to be with you. We worked with all the kids together. That was the first time I had ever worked with these age groups. Now this is a bigger one. At the time, you're right, we are pioneers. You're absolutely right about that because this was unheard of at the time. Do you remember when they came to us and asked us if we would be willing to take on a child with special needs? The building right down, well, we won't talk about that. But anyway, their teachers were not comfortable enough or had the experience to work with a child with special needs. Well, neither were we. But what we knew was we had a love for children. We know that children have an ability. We knew we were going to take that on and we were going to do the very best that we could. And that child came to us with CPS at the time. We knew nothing about inclusion, nothing. But somehow we scrambled. We used team communication, we worked together, and that child taught us so much. And you were an intricate part of that in his life. And you and I had an opportunity to talk, 5 minutes ago? She saw this child, and he's now how old? 23 years old. So that's just a statement of the kind of person that Linda is, the kind of program that we have, and we pioneered that because nobody wanted to touch this child with inclusion, but we all came together and we said we're going to do it. And it made us better people and better teachers. And that's all due to you too as well. You have a lovely demeanor about yourself and you give to people, whether you know or not. Whether it's out front or however it is, you lead by example. And you do that in the most dignified way. So I just want to wish you the 25 years you have, and maybe not 25 more, because we're getting old.
So I asked her if she wanted to say anything. She said no, but I'll give you a hug. So thank you, Linda, for your service. And it really is amazing when you tell the story of CDR. Some of the stuff we just take for granted was so new and so innovative. And it's just remarkable sometimes when you think about it. And then one of the things I tried to share with the reporter yesterday was, she said, well, what would it have been like for a family when CDR started? And if your child was in a walker, the front steps at Mackey Whaley might as well have been the Berlin Wall as far as their ability to access education. And CDR contributed to fixing that. People like Linda had a lot to do with that, so thank you for your service. We now get to do some great awards. Those of you who've been with CDR a while knew that we had an award called the Unsung Hero, which we've maintained, and I added a couple. One was to really reflect the professionalism that we're looking for and the people that embody that. But also, we added an award to recognize those individuals that carried on the spirit of a woman that worked at CDR, a dear friend of many of us, a woman named Terry Otto. And Terry was with CDR for quite some time. She's near and dear to a lot of folks. And she was the type of person that regardless of what she was going through, had a good attitude, kept the focus on you. She was uplifting in conditions that would shock you that somebody would be able to look beyond themselves. Give you an example. She was probably a couple of months into some pretty heavy chemotherapy and was at the front desk one day, and I think Corrine was at the conference. Corrine and Lisa were at a conference where I had a gallbladder attack, and I ended up going into the hospital. I had to get my gallbladder removed. I was back to the office a couple days later, and when I walked in, the only thing Terry would really want to talk about is how I was doing. How you doing? Are you feeling okay? And it was almost overwhelming in how humbling it was, because here's this woman just absolutely, her body's just being attacked by the chemotherapy. You know, it's a pretty barbaric way to treat disease. But through all of that, she maintained a very positive, uplifting attitude. And so we wanted to set aside a moment and allow you all as staff to nominate individuals that you thought exemplified Terry's attitude. So there's 2 winners this year, and I wanted to read the comments that I received. And I appreciate those of you that made nominations. I think I might have had a record number of nominations this year for people, which is great. That's a good sign that you all are want to reach out and acknowledge and thank each other. So and there were multiple nominations for this individual. So I'm just going to read them and let you all help me congratulate this co-winner. She had a very difficult year, but has done more than her share of responsibility, and has always done so with a smile on her face. The most important thing about what she does is that she always has the best interest of children and families at the forefront of all her thoughts. And some of the next nomination quotes are, she always jumps in happily to lend a hand or take on a project, and she does it with an enthusiasm that makes others want to join her. She has a lot on her plate this year and has worked hard on her new job, completing tasks without complaining. She's amazing with the children and families, always has a wonderful spirit, and she's a tremendous asset to CDR. And the last says, she's made the best of some difficult situations and never complained, and always has an eye on to do what is necessary to ensure that the children have a wonderful experience. To the casual observer, it can look like business as usual, but those of us around her, we know the dedication and stress that she's endured. So please help me welcome and congratulate the co-winner of the 2015 Terry Otto Award is Amanda Wood. But part of why we do this is that you shouldn't be shocked at. I've agreed with everything that everybody said, and she's been through a lot, and so thank you for all that you do. So that's why I had this big gag going the whole time. I kept telling her that I needed to call her up to talk about the Christmas parade, which I'll do later. So I apologize for having been deceptive, but I needed to sit there for a while, and so that's that story. But now you. But later on, she's been also, one of the things that didn't get mentioned was that she's really taken the Christmas parade under her wing and made it a lot of fun. And if you've been in Wendy or Marcia or anybody's office, there's these empty cardboard boxes wrapped up like Christmas gifts. There must be 40 of them. We're gonna have the craziest float probably on Saturday, but we'll call Amanda back. So. The second person that won, it's sometimes hard when you get so many great nominations to pick one over the other. And so it's great that we have the discretion to have two people. In the interest of time, there were a lot of people that made comments about this individual, but I'm just gonna read the one that I think sums it up really well. It was obvious from her first day that she had a heart for children and a gift for working with them. Her energy and enthusiasm is infectious. She's always one of the first to jump into a special project and volunteer to help out where she can, yet she always has a kind smile and a thank you for all the others who are doing the work and expresses gratitude in her everyday approach to life. She embodies all the finest qualities of Terry: a commitment to CDR's mission, patience and respect for others, a positive and optimistic attitude, a willingness to help others, dedication to her work, care and concern for the well-being of others, and a strong love for children. So please help me recognize the co-winner of the 2015 Terry Otto Award, Priscilla Arrojo.
Thank you, I was not waiting for this. Thank you, that's
Thank
it.
you. Thank you, Priscilla. Appreciate it. One of the last times I was at CDR, she was teaching the kids to count to 10 in Brazilian, or Portuguese, I'm sorry, which is hilarious, because I wasn't quite sure. But so our kids in Lafayette will probably be trilingual by the time they turn 3. Show up on the ELAP maybe. I think what's great about the recognition and the nominations that came in for Priscilla is that she hasn't been here a long time. So you can have a big impact on this organization even if you're brand new. You just grow where you're planted and have a great attitude and work hard. So thank you, Priscilla, for that. I'm going to jump around. I want to do the unsung hero now. And then we're going to do, you'll be able to tell why I had to switch the order here in a second. So if you bear with me for that, a lot of nominations and great comments, especially from families, for the unsung hero. She helps me be a better parent by helping me recognize age-appropriate behavior and not get so stressed out by what seems like bad behavior. I take a few deep breaths and I repeat the words she always says and respond to behavior with alternatives. She has not judged my choices, but has encouraged me, and when I was down on myself, she helped to lift my spirits and help me focus on my goals for myself and my son. Another parent said she's every bit as attentive to our family's needs as we are ourselves, and sometimes even more so. She's perceptive, perseverant, warm, and caring, educated, but still approachable. The next family said, in our experience, her heart drives her to go above and beyond the 9-to-5 job, and she truly changes lives for the better. She approaches people with love, respect, concern, and a non-judgmental attitude, always asking questions